I had him perfectly lined up in my crosshairs. Senator Johnston, corrupt bastard with too many secrets and one enemy with enough money to put me on his trail. My finger caressed the trigger. My breathing slowed to an imperceptible rhythm. 3, 2. A flash of copper caught my eye across the street. A woman with fiery red hair stepping out of a coffee shop, laughing into her phone. Something about the carefree tilt of her head made me hesitate for half a second, long enough for my target to move. Damn it, I muttered, readjusting. The job got done, it always did, but that momentary distraction bothered me all night. I never thought I'd see copper hair again, let alone fight her for a vinyl record. I had my hand on it first, she insisted, blue eyes flashing with unexpected intensity. We stood in the crowded aisle of Vintage Vibes during their annual sale, both gripping the last copy of Etta James's At Last limited pressing. I've been searching for this record for 3 years, I replied coolly, not loosening my grip. I had learned patience from lying perfectly still for hours waiting for targets. I could outlast this woman. So have I, she said. But something shifted in her expression. My mother used to play this before she died. I stared at her, searching for manipulation. Finding none, I still couldn't bring myself to release the record. Sentiment was a luxury in my profession, but collection was my one indulgence. The records hanging on my apartment walls were the only decoration in an otherwise Spartan life. Split it, she suggested suddenly. What? We can share it, listen together, alternate custody. A smile spread across her face, the kind that reached all the way to her eyes. I'm Beatrice. Beatrice Collins. Names were dangerous in my line of work, exchanged only when necessary. Yet I heard myself say, Anna Barnes. That's how I found myself agreeing to meet a complete stranger for listening sessions, against every professional instinct I'd cultivated over a decade in the business. As we exchanged numbers, her fingers brushed mine, warm against my perpetually cold hands. You're freezing, she remarked, holding my hand a moment longer than necessary. Poor circulation, I lied easily. The truth was more complicated, something about killing that chilled you from the inside out, no matter how justified the target. See you Friday, Anna, she said, a hint of something playful in her voice as she backed away through the crowded store. My place. I'll text you the address. I watched her leave, red hair bouncing with each step. The record felt suddenly heavy in my hands. This was reckless. Attachments were liabilities. Relationships were vulnerabilities waiting to be exploited. Yet 3 days later, I found myself conducting counter-surveillance procedures before approaching her apartment building, a modest pre-war structure in a decent neighborhood, not rich, not poor, the kind of place where people minded their business. Perfect. I checked my reflection in a storefront window. Blonde hair pulled into a casual ponytail, green eyes softened with minimal makeup, simple jeans and a sweater that concealed the knife strapped to my ankle. I looked harmless. That was always my best disguise. As I raised my hand to knock, Beatrice opened the door with perfect timing, as though she'd been waiting. The scent of something baking wafted into the hallway. You came, she said, sounding genuinely pleased. I wasn't sure you would. Neither was I thought, but didn't say. Instead, I held up the record we'd fought over, my entry ticket to this dangerous game I was playing with myself. I keep my word, I replied simply. She smiled, stepping aside to let me in. So do I. Wine or tea before we listen? I stepped into her colorful apartment, noting exits, weapons of opportunity, and the gleaming record player waiting in the corner. Wine, I said. One glass wouldn't dull my reflexes too much, and something told me I'd need it to survive whatever this was, this bizarre connection with a woman who had no idea she'd invited death itself into her living room. Back in my apartment, I methodically cleaned my Glock, muscle memory guiding my hands as my mind wandered elsewhere. The vinyl record sat on my otherwise empty coffee table, a splash of color in my monochrome existence. Tomorrow was our second listening session. I should cancel. I disassembled the barrel, thinking of Beatrice's laugh. It erupted from deep in her chest, unstudied and contagious. Nothing like the calculated chuckles I manufactured when infiltrating social circles for work. When was the last time I'd genuinely laughed? My phone buzzed. A random number. My handler's latest burner. Confirmation on Johnston. Payment transferred. Stand by for next assignment. I deleted the message and continued cleaning, my movements more aggressive than necessary, Another name would come soon, another file, another target to study, track, and eliminate. The next evening, I arrived at Beatrice's apartment with a bottle of whiskey. She greeted me wearing faded jeans and a paint-splattered Harvard sweatshirt, her hair twisted into a messy bun. "Fancy," I commented, nodding at the sweatshirt. "Oh, this old thing," she laughed. "I give art therapy sessions at the center. The kids got carried away with the finger paints." She led me to her living room where the record player waited. As Etta James's soulful voice filled the apartment, Beatrice curled up on the couch opposite me. "So what's your story, Anna Barnes? Last time you fed me that line about corporate security consulting, but your eyes were somewhere else entirely." I raised an eyebrow. "Perceptive. It's literally my job. Social worker, remember? I spot deflection every day." I offered my practice cover story, remote security analyst, frequent travel, no family ties, while studying her bookshelf. Psychology texts, art therapy manuals, and romance novels sat side by side. "What about your work?" I deflected. "Tell me about the center." Her eyes lit up as she described helping troubled teenagers find stability through art and counseling. I envied her purpose, so clean and uncomplicated compared to mine. "Sometimes I worry it's not enough," she admitted, pouring more whiskey. "These kids face so much: poverty, addiction, violence. Art therapy feels like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound." The metaphor hit uncomfortably close to home. I'd created more than a few bullet wounds in my career. "Small interventions matter," I found myself saying. "Sometimes one moment of connection changes everything." "Wow," she teased, leaning closer. That was almost profound. Our eyes met across the dimly lit space. Her lips parted slightly, and I caught myself staring. I looked away first, standing abruptly. "I should go." "But it's pouring outside," Beatrice protested. On cue, thunder rumbled overhead. I hadn't even noticed the storm beginning. "Stay for another drink," she suggested. "The record isn't even finished." I hesitated, my training screaming against unnecessary attachments, while something else, something long dormant, urged me to sink back onto her couch. "One more," I conceded. One turned into two, then three. The rain lashed against her windows as Beatrice told stories about college activism and family holidays. I contributed carefully edited anecdotes from countries I'd visited, sanitized of blood and surveillance. "You're not what I expected," she said finally, her voice softer than before. "What did you expect?" "Someone colder. When we met at the store, you had this intensity, like you were calculating every move." I stiffened. "And now?" Beatrice moved to sit beside me, close enough that I could smell her shampoo, something with lavender. Her fingers brushed mine as she took my glass. "Now I see someone hiding," she whispered. "I just can't figure out from what." Her face was inches from mine, eyes questioning. My heart hammered with unfamiliar panic. This wasn't fear. I knew fear intimately. This was something more dangerous. "The rain's stopping," I said hoarsely, pulling back. "I should really go." Outside her apartment, I gulped cold air, steadying myself. Assassins can't afford connections. They become leverage, weakness, liability, everything I'd spent years eliminating from my life. Yet, as I walked home through puddles reflecting city lights, I was already counting hours until our next meeting. The file landed in my encrypted email with the usual sparse details. Victor Ramirez, money launderer for the Costa Rican cartel with a new identity in Jackson. Looking at his photo, all I could think was that his eyes were nothing like Beatrice's. His were calculating, cold. Hers were alive with passion when she talked about her work. "Focus," I muttered to myself, scrolling through his information, but concentration escaped me as my phone buzzed with a text. "Volunteer day at the center tomorrow? We need extra hands for the art therapy session. Say yes." I should have declined. Instead, I texted back, "What time?" The community center was housed in a renovated warehouse, all exposed brick and hope. Beatrice greeted me at the entrance, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "You actually came." She hugged me impulsively. I stiffened, then awkwardly patted her back. Physical contact that wasn't combat-related remained foreign territory. I said I would. She led me through corridors, plastered with teenage artwork, to a large room where tables were set up with paint, clay, and various supplies. "Everyone, this is Anna," Beatrice announced to the small group of teenagers slouched in chairs. She's our new volunteer. I scanned the room automatically, exits, threats, vantage points, before forcing myself to smile. A sullen boy with dark hair glared from the corner. That's Miguel, Beatrice whispered. New to the program. His father was deported last year. Something in his defiant posture struck me. I'd worn that same look at his age, after everything fell apart. Throughout the session, I helped distribute supplies, and even found myself sculpting alongside a quiet girl who seemed afraid of her own shadow. Beatrice moved through the room like sunlight, encouraging, prompting, listening. When I went to the supply closet for more clay, I froze at the sound of a familiar name. Ramirez got what was coming to him, a male voice said from around the corner. Dealing in this neighborhood. I pressed against the wall, listening. Victor Ramirez, my target, had a brother who'd been killed in a drug deal gone wrong. His family lived 3 blocks from this center. The realization hit me like ice water. I was standing mere feet from people connected to my next target. People Beatrice probably knew and helped. I grabbed the clay and returned to the room, avoiding Beatrice's questioning glance. My worlds were colliding dangerously. After the session, she caught up with me outside. You were amazing with Lucia. She never responds to new people. I recognize myself in her, I admitted before I could stop myself. Beatrice's eyes softened. The silent observers see everything, don't they? She stepped closer, her hand brushing mine. There's a coffee shop around the corner. Join me? The smart move was to leave, create distance. Instead, I followed her, watching as the setting sun caught her hair, transforming it to living flame. Over coffee, she talked about her cases, careful with confidentiality but passionate about outcomes. I found myself entranced by her commitment to piecing broken people back together, when my entire career had been taking them apart. You're staring, she said softly. You're beautiful when you talk about your work, I replied, before I could censor myself. Her cheeks flushed. She reached across and took my hand, her thumb tracing circles on my palm. Anna, she whispered, leaning forward. A sharp movement outside the window caught my eye. The man passing by wore the distinctive tattoo I'd memorized from my briefing, Ramirez's cousin, a known associate. He glanced casually into the coffee shop. I jerked back from Beatrice. What's wrong? She asked. Nothing. I forced a smile, just remembered something. Walking her home later, I maintained a careful distance. My mind raced with contingencies. If I took the Ramirez job, I'd potentially endanger this fragile connection with Beatrice. If I didn't. Outside her apartment, she turned to me expectantly. I had a really nice time today. Me too, I admitted. She stepped closer, her eyes asking a question. I knew I should walk away. Instead, I found myself leaning in, my lips meeting hers with surprising gentleness. The kiss lasted only seconds, but it felt like free fall. When we separated, her eyes remained closed for a heartbeat longer. Good night, Anna, she whispered. Walking home, I touched my lips, still feeling her there. This connection was becoming a liability. My handler would call it a vulnerability. Any professional assassin would terminate it immediately. Tomorrow, I decided, I'd end it tomorrow. But even as I thought it, I knew it was already too late. I never meant to follow Miguel from the community center, but something about his hunched shoulders and furtive glances triggered my professional instincts. When he ducked into an alley known for drug activity, I cursed under my breath and followed. 3 men surrounded him, 20s, tattooed, one with a hand tucked suspiciously in his jacket. Classic dealer intimidation. Your sister owes us, the tallest one said, backing Miguel against the wall. Either she pays up or you work it off. I should have walked away. This wasn't my business. Hey, I called instead, stepping into the alley. Kids expected back at the center. Beatrice sent me to find him. The men turned, sizing me up. Blonde, average height, non-threatening. Exactly the underestimation I count on. Mind your business, lady, the leader sneered. Miguel is my business, I replied, voice dropping to a register few people ever hear and survive. Walk away. They laughed. The shortest one pulled a switchblade. 15 seconds later, all 3 were on the ground. The knife was in my hand. I hadn't even broken a sweat. Miguel stared at me, wide-eyed. Holy, who are you? I pocketed the knife. Someone who understands trouble. Let's go. Walking back, I gave him a stern lecture about debt and dangerous men that sounded so legitimate I almost believed it myself. At the center entrance, I gripped his shoulder. "Not a word about this to Beatrice," I warned. "She doesn't need to worry." His nod was solemn, but something in his eyes had changed. Admiration mixed with curiosity. A dangerous combination. I should have left immediately, but Beatrice spotted me through the window and waved enthusiastically. Her smile made my chest ache with unfamiliar warmth. Later that evening, she invited me to her apartment for dinner, to thank you for volunteering. I knew I should decline. Instead, I brought wine. Over pasta, our conversation flowed easily until she suddenly asked, "What happened with Miguel today?" I froze mid-bite. "What do you mean?" "He came back different. Kept looking at you like you were some kind of superhero." Her blue eyes narrowed, and Marco's crew mysteriously avoided him for the first time in weeks. "Coincidence?" I shrugged, refilling our glasses. "And the knife wound on your hand? Another coincidence?" I glanced down at the small cut I hadn't noticed during the confrontation. Careless. "Anna," Beatrice set down her fork. "I've worked in these neighborhoods for years. I know what violence looks like. What I can't figure out is how you do." The moment stretched between us like a tripwire. "You don't know me," I finally said, voice flat. "That's the problem," she countered. "I've spent weeks trying to. You deflect questions, disappear for days, show up with mysterious injuries. You've never invited me to your place. When I ask about family, you change the subject." I stood abruptly. "I should go." "That's it? Running away when things get personal?" "I'm not running," I snapped. "I'm protecting you." "From what?" "From me," I wanted to say. "From the darkness I bring everywhere." Instead, I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. "This was a mistake," I said coldly. Her voice followed me. "Bullshit. You're scared of whatever this is between us." I didn't answer, slamming the door behind me. Outside, rain had started. A steady, cold downpour that soaked through my clothes as I walked aimlessly, no destination in mind. 3 hours later, drenched and miserable, I found myself back at her building. The rational part of me screamed to leave, to cut ties cleanly. Yet, I stood in the rain, staring up at her windows until finally raising my hand to press her buzzer at midnight. She answered immediately, as though she'd been waiting. "You're soaking wet," she said flatly. I know. Water dripped from my hair onto her welcome mat. "I'm sorry." She stepped back, letting me in. We stood in her entryway, silence heavy between us. "You're right," I finally admitted. "I'm scared." Beatrice moved closer, reaching out to touch my cheek. Her warmth against my rain-chilled skin made me shiver. "So am I," she whispered. "But I'm more afraid of not knowing what this could be." When she kissed me this time, it wasn't gentle. It was demanding, questioning, breaking through barriers I'd constructed long ago. I pushed her against the wall, kissing her back with years of pent-up emotion I hadn't allowed myself to feel. We barely made it to her bedroom, leaving a trail of wet clothes behind us. In the darkness, I surrendered control for the first time in my adult life, letting her hands map territories I declared forbidden to others. Afterward, lying in her arms, I realized I'd crossed a line I couldn't return from. Professional distance was irretrievably compromised. And I couldn't bring myself to care. "Nightmares again?" Beatrice asked, gently stroking my hair as I jolted awake beside her for the third time that week. I'd been staying at her place more often than my own sterile apartment, drawn to her warmth despite my better judgment. But sleep brought images I couldn't control, faces of targets, splattered blood, the weight of silenced weapons in my hands. "Just insomnia," I lied, extracting myself from her embrace to sit on the edge of the bed. "You thrash and mutter names," she said, her voice gentle but probing. "Is it PTSD? Whatever corporate security really means to you, I'm guessing it's not spreadsheets and background checks." I tensed. "Drop it, B. I know someone who might help. A hypnotherapist named Dr. Levine. She works with my veterans group at the center." "I don't need therapy," I snapped, harsher than intended. Beatrice didn't flinch. After 6 weeks together, she'd learned to weather my sudden coldness. "Everyone needs help sometimes, Anna." Her fingers traced patterns on my back, even mysterious badasses who take down drug dealers and wake up screaming. 3 days later, against every professional instinct, I found myself in Dr. Levine's office, a surprisingly modern space with minimalist furniture and soft lighting. No crystals or incense, just credentials on the wall, and a calm-voiced woman with silver hair. "Beatrice speaks highly of you," she said, gesturing for me to sit. "She mentioned sleep disturbances." "I'm here as a favor," I replied stiffly. "I don't believe in hypnosis." Dr. Levine smiled. "Belief isn't required for efficacy, but your consent is. Nothing happens unless you allow it." Something about her directness disarmed me slightly. After basic questions about my symptoms, she explained the process. No swinging watches or mind control, just guided relaxation to access subconscious patterns. "Ready to try?" she asked. I nodded, still skeptical but willing to humor Beatrice. "Close your eyes. Focus on my voice. With each breath, you're sinking deeper into relaxation." Her voice became distant as unexpected heaviness settled over me. Despite my training to resist interrogation techniques, I felt myself slipping into a trance state. Then the images came, not of my hits or training, but something entirely unexpected. Stone walls, a castle courtyard, the weight of chainmail on my shoulders. "What do you see?" Dr. Levine's voice seemed to come from far away. "I'm standing guard," I heard myself say. "Protecting the lady's chambers. My sword is drawn." "What year is it?" "The year of our Lord, 1387. The rational part of my brain screamed that this was nonsense, yet the images felt more like memories than imagination. The smell of tallow candles, the weight of the sword in my hand, the fierce loyalty I felt toward my charge. "Who are you protecting?" "Lady Beatrix, the healer. The Duke wants her skills for his army, but she refuses to leave the villagers who need her." More scenes flashed rapidly. A red-haired woman grinding herbs in a stone cottage, my hands cleaning a blood-stained blade, passionate embraces in hidden forest clearings. Then pain. An arrow through my chest as I stood between Beatrix and the Duke's men. "She weeps over me," I whispered. "Her hands try to heal me, but the wound is too deep." Dr. Levine's voice pulled me back. "Come back to the present now." 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I snapped awake, disoriented and shaking. "What the hell was that?" I demanded. "That," she said thoughtfully, "was unexpected." "Have you ever explored past life regression before?" "That's not real," I insisted, standing abruptly. "You planted those suggestions." "I assure you I did not." She studied me with interest. "The details were too specific, the emotions too authentic. And your mention of Beatrix, a name similar to Beatrice, is particularly intriguing." I grabbed my jacket. This was a mistake. "Before you go," Dr. Levine called after me. "Consider bringing Beatrice for a joint session. The connection you described matches patterns I've seen in souls who find each other across lifetimes." I rushed out without answering, unnerved by the vivid images still flashing through my mind. I'd experienced hallucinations during specialized training, but nothing like this. Nothing that felt so real, so emotionally raw. When Beatrice texted to ask how it went, I nearly ignored her. Instead, I found myself typing. Something happened, something I can't explain. That night, curled against her, I reluctantly described my experience. Instead of mockery, her eyes widened with recognition. "I've had dreams," she whispered. "Of healing people in a stone cottage, of loving someone who carried a sword." We stared at each other in the darkness, a strange understanding passing between us. "Dr. Levine suggested a joint session," I finally said. Beatrice interlaced her fingers with mine. "Then let's do it. Together." As I drifted to sleep in her arms, ancient memories mingled with present fears. Something was awakening between us, something that transcended the shadows of my current existence, offering a glimpse of connection that spanned beyond the blood on my hands. For the first time in years, I slept without nightmares. Dr. Levine's office felt different with Beatrice beside me, her warm hand anchoring me as we sat on the leather couch. The doctor positioned us facing each other, knees almost touching. "Joint regression is powerful," she cautioned. "You may experience the same memory from different perspectives, or encounter each other across multiple lifetimes. Whatever emerges, remember you're safe here." I nodded, suddenly nervous. My profession had taught me to control every variable, yet here I was surrendering to the unknown. "Close your eyes," Dr. Levine began. "Breathe together. Match your rhythms. As we synchronized our breathing, I felt the room fade away. The sensation was like falling through layers of consciousness, deeper than my previous session. Where are you? Dr. Levine's voice seemed distant. A battlefield, I heard myself answer. Ancient Greece, I am a shield bearer. I'm tending the wounded, Beatrice's voice came simultaneously. My hands are stained with blood not my own. Images flooded through me, bronze armor, clashing swords, Beatrice's face younger but unmistakable as she moved among fallen soldiers. I watched myself die protecting her medical tent from raiders. The scene shifted. Imperial China, Beatrice whispered. I am the daughter of a silk merchant. You are my father's guard. I saw myself following her through crowded marketplaces, my hand never far from my sword. Felt the agony of loving her from a distance, separated by class and duty. Watched her arranged marriage. Died years later still in service to her family. More lifetimes cycled rapidly. Renaissance Italy, where I was a female artist's apprentice to Beatrice's patron, 1920s. New York, where we were rival journalists who became lovers. Rural England, where she was a nurse and I a wounded pilot. Always finding each other. Always separated by circumstance, duty, or death. The pattern repeats, Dr. Levine observed softly. One protects, one heals. But something always prevents completion. As we returned to consciousness, Beatrice's eyes were wet with tears. I realized mine were too. How is this possible? I whispered. Some connections transcend explanation, Dr. Levine replied. The question is what you do with this knowledge now. On the walk home, Beatrice's hands stayed firmly clasped in mine, both of us quiet with the weight of centuries between us. Do you think we're doomed to repeat it? She finally asked. Finding each other only to be torn apart? Before I could answer, my phone vibrated. Unknown number, my handler. I need to take this, I said, stepping away from Beatrice. 0 hour on Ramirez, a clipped voice stated. Tonight, dossier updated with location, confirmation required. My stomach dropped. I'd been avoiding the Ramirez assignment for weeks, hoping it would be reassigned. Understood, I replied mechanically. Confirmation within 24 hours. When I returned to Beatrice, her expression had changed. Work? She asked, too casually. Yes. Must be important to warrant that face. I forced a smile. Nothing I can't handle. Later in her apartment, I pretended to read while Beatrice graded therapy assessments. My mind raced through options. The Ramirez job was simple, a straightforward elimination. I'd done hundreds like it. But now the thought filled me with unexpected dread. What are we watching tonight? Beatrice asked, setting aside her papers. I closed my book. Actually, I need to go home tonight. Early meeting tomorrow. Her expression fell slightly. Everything okay? Fine. I lied. Just work stuff. She studied me for a moment, then approached slowly, straddling my lap on the reading chair. Her fingers threaded through my hair as she kissed me deeply. Whatever it is, she whispered against my lips. Whatever you're not telling me. I'm here when you're ready. I pulled her closer, breathing in her scent, memorizing the weight of her against me. I love you, she said suddenly, the first time either of us had spoken those words. They hung in the air between us, dangerous and beautiful. For the first time in my career, I made a decision that wasn't calculated for survival or advantage. I love you too, I replied, the truth of it terrifying. That night, after leaving Beatrice sleeping, I called my handler from a secure line. I need to withdraw from the Ramirez contract. Silence then, not possible. Explain. Personal conflict, I stated flatly. Personal? The contempt was evident. There are no personal conflicts in our line of work. Complete the job or face Protocol 19. Protocol 19. What happens when an asset is compromised? I'd helped enforce it twice. It never ended well for the asset. You have 48 hours, my handler concluded. After that, you're considered compromised. The line went dead, leaving me standing in the cold night air, caught between the life I'd built and the woman I loved. For the first time, they couldn't coexist. I noticed the tail 3 blocks from my apartment, a nondescript sedan keeping perfect distance. Sloppy. They should have switched vehicles after I spotted the same car yesterday outside my building. Protocol 19 was already in motion. I was being watched. I took an intentionally complex route home, confirming my suspicion when the sedan maintained pursuit despite my random turns. When I finally entered my apartment, I went straight to the hidden compartment beneath my floorboards. Emergency cash, passport, untraceable burner phone. My handler had given me 48 hours, but they'd never intended to honor that deadline. I had perhaps 24 before they moved from surveillance to elimination. I packed light, one bag with essentials. As I reached for my weapons cache, my private phone buzzed with Beatrice's ringtone. "Hey," she said when I answered, her voice like sunshine through clouds. "Dinner tonight? I'm making that pasta you liked." I closed my eyes, picturing her in her kitchen, red hair pulled back, humming while she cooked. "I can't tonight," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Work emergency." "Again?" The disappointment was clear. "Anna, this is the third time this week. What's going on?" "Nothing I can't handle," I assured her, the same lie I'd been telling myself. "Rain check?" "Sure," she said after a pause. "Call me later?" "Of course." I ended the call, knowing it might be our last conversation. The thought pierced deeper than I expected. For 3 days, I maintained radio silence with Beatrice while executing countermeasures, switching safe houses, monitoring surveillance, preparing escape routes. I'd identified at least 3 operatives tracking me, former colleagues who'd now classified me as a target. On the 4th day, Beatrice showed up at my apartment building. I spotted her from my surveillance feed, pacing outside, repeatedly buzzing my unit, finally sitting on the front steps in stubborn vigil. My heart raced with panic. She was exposing herself to danger just by association. When night fell and she remained, I made a calculated risk, approaching from the service entrance, and pulling her quickly inside. "What are you doing here?" I demanded once we were in my apartment. "What am I doing? You disappeared for days." Her eyes blazed with anger and hurt. "No calls, no texts. I thought something happened to you." "You need to leave," I insisted, checking the windows. "It's not safe." "Not safe?" She crossed her arms. "Anna, enough with the mystery." "What the hell is going on?" "I can't explain right now." "No." She planted herself firmly in the center of my sparse living room. "I'm not leaving until you tell me the truth. All of it." The sound of a car door slamming outside made my decision for me. I grabbed her arm and pulled her away from the windows. "They're here," I whispered, reaching for the gun strapped under my coffee table. "Who's here?" "Anna, you're scaring me." I had no time for gentle revelations. I moved to the front door, peering through the peephole to confirm my suspicion. Davis, a cleanup specialist I'd worked alongside in Prague. I turned to Beatrice, whose face had gone pale. "I need you to trust me right now. When I say run, you run. Don't look back, don't hesitate." "Are those guns?" she whispered, staring at the weapons I'd exposed while checking my exit strategy. Before I could answer, the door exploded inward, a precision breach charge, standard company procedure. Instinct took over. I pulled Beatrice down behind the couch as wood splinters flew across the room. Davis entered first, tactical formation, weapon sweeping. I fired twice, leg shots, not fatal. I'd worked with him for years. The second operative I didn't recognize, making the headshot easier. "Oh my God!" Beatrice gasped beside me. I grabbed her hand. "Move!" We fled through my pre-planned escape route, service stairs to the building's roof, across to the adjacent structure, down through their stairwell to emerge 2 blocks away. Beatrice trembled violently as I pulled her into a hidden alcove to check for pursuit. "You killed him," she whispered, her eyes wide with shock. "You just, without hesitation." "He would have killed us both," I stated flatly. "That's what they're here to do." "Who?" she demanded, her voice rising. "Who are these people? Who are you?" The truth hung between us like a live grenade. I made the hardest decision of my career. "I'm an assassin," I said quietly. "Contract killer. Has been for 12 years. She stared at me, disbelief warring with the undeniable evidence of what she'd just witnessed. "The business trips," she said slowly. "The mysterious injuries. The way you handled those dealers with Miguel." I nodded. "I was sent to eliminate a target connected to your community center. That's why I had to distance myself. They've marked me as compromised because I refused the assignment." "Because of me," she whispered. "Because of us," I corrected. "I couldn't do it anymore. Not with you in my life." Fear, betrayal, and confusion crossed her face in rapid succession. Then something else. A determination I'd come to recognize. "What do we do now?" "We?" I echoed in surprise. She grabbed my hand. "I've spent lifetimes finding you. I'm not losing you in this one." The motel sat on the outskirts of Jackson, its neon sign flickering weakly against the night sky. I checked us in under one of my emergency aliases, paying cash, keeping Beatrice close as we hurried to our room. "We have about 12 hours before they track us here," I explained, securing the flimsy door and checking the windows. "I need to tell you everything so you understand what we're facing." Beatrice sat on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The adrenaline that had carried her through our escape was fading, reality settling in. "Start talking," she said quietly. So I did. I told her about my recruitment as a disaffected teenager, my specialized training, the years of contracts and kills. I explained the organization, neither government nor purely private, operating in shadows between official agencies. I described how they would never stop hunting an asset who knew what I knew. "All those business trips," she said, voice hollow. "All those nights you came to me with unexplained injuries." "I never brought my work to your door," I insisted. "Until now." "Why?" Her eyes met mine, searching. "Why risk everything by refusing this assignment?" I sat beside her, not quite touching. "Because loving you made me remember who I was before all this. Someone who could feel something beyond tactical assessment and execution." She absorbed this in silence, then asked the question I'd been dreading. "How many people have you killed?" I didn't sugarcoat it. 47. All targets vetted as criminals, terrorists, or direct threats to national security. "That's how you justified it?" "I never needed justification," I admitted, "until I met you." The weight of my confession hung between us. I waited for her to walk out, to realize she was in love with a monster. Instead, she took my hand, her touch gentle despite everything. "I should be running from you," she whispered. "Everything I believe in, everything I've worked for, helping people, healing trauma, it's the opposite of what you've done." "I know," I said, the words tight in my throat. "But when I think about losing you," her voice broke, "it feels like all those lives we glimpsed, all those times we found each other only to be separated." I pulled her closer, our foreheads touching. "I can't change what I've done, but I can promise you this. I will keep you safe, whatever it takes." "I don't want safety at the expense of your soul," she replied fiercely. "My soul was gone long before you found me." "No," she insisted. "I've seen it. In how you helped Miguel, in how you listen to music, in how you touch me when you think I'm sleeping." Her hands framed my face, forcing me to look at her. "We're going to find a way through this," she said with unexpected certainty. "Together." I wanted to believe her, but 12 years of calculating odds told me our chances were minimal. "The organization has resources, connections," I explained. "New identities won't be enough. They'll find us eventually." "Then we need leverage," she said practically. I stared at her in surprise. "You've been watching too many spy movies." "I'm serious. You must know something they don't want exposed." She wasn't wrong. I'd compiled insurance over the years, details on operations, clients, political connections, information stored in encrypted drives hidden in 3 locations across the country. "It's dangerous," I warned her. "Just knowing about it puts you at risk." "I'm already at risk," she countered. "We both are." As dawn broke, we formulated a plan, retrieved my insurance package, established contact through a former colleague who'd successfully disappeared, negotiate terms for our freedom. When exhaustion finally claimed her, Beatrice curled against me, her body trusting despite everything she'd learned. I held her, memorizing the weight of her in my arms, the scent of her hair, the rhythm of her breathing. If these were to be our last moments of peace, I wanted to remember every detail. While she slept, I slipped away briefly to secure transportation, a used car purchased with cash from a lot that didn't ask questions. When I returned, Beatrice was awake, her hair damp from the shower. "I thought you'd left," she admitted. "Never without you," I promised, tossing her a bag of clothes I'd picked up. "Not in this lifetime." She changed quickly, transforming from Beatrice Collins, dedicated social worker, into someone less noticeable. Baseball cap covering her distinctive red hair, nondescript jeans and sweatshirt, minimal makeup. As she emerged from the bathroom, she caught me watching and gave a twirl. How do I look? Fugitive chic? I couldn't help smiling despite everything. Beautiful. Always. She crossed to me, rising on tiptoes to kiss me with surprising intensity. What was that for? I asked when we separated. Practice, she replied. For our new life together. As we prepared to leave, Beatrice paused by the door. Anna? If we make it through this, when we make it through this, no more secrets between us. Promise? I took her hand, feeling the weight of past lives and present dangers, but also the possibility of something I'd never dared hope for, a future. I promise. 6 months can transform a life entirely. The small house we rented on the outskirts of a town 30 miles from Jackson had become more home to me than any place I'd lived in the past decade. I stood at the kitchen window, watching Beatrice tend to her herb garden, red hair gleaming in the afternoon sun. My insurance package had worked, leverage carefully applied through intermediaries, dead drops, and encrypted communications. A negotiated ceasefire. Not freedom exactly, but a carefully maintained détente. They wouldn't pursue us as long as my information remained securely unreleased. One wrong move from either side would trigger mutually assured destruction. I'd become Anna Williams, self-defense instructor at the local community college. The skills that once made me lethal now helped women protect themselves. The irony wasn't lost on me. Beatrice, now Beatrice Williams, had established a small community outreach program focusing on trauma recovery. Different name, same passion. Different town, same mission. The continuity comforted me. Admiring the view? She called, catching me watching her. Always, I replied, stepping outside to join her. She handed me a trowel. Make yourself useful then. We worked together in comfortable silence, planting seedlings in the rich soil. My hands, once used only for destruction, now participated in creation. The contradictions still astonished me daily. I had another memory last night, Beatrice said casually, as if discussing the weather. Ancient Egypt this time. You were a royal guard, I was a temple priestess. These fragments continued surfacing for both of us, past lives emerging in dreams, triggered by mundane objects or familiar sensations. Dr. Levine had explained it might happen after our hypnosis sessions opened those channels. Let me guess. I smiled. I died protecting you? Actually, no. She sat back on her heels, wiping soil from her hands. We grew old together. It's the only lifetime I've remembered where we weren't separated. I stilled, absorbing this. What was different in that life? We chose each other above everything else, she said simply. No duties, no obligations came before our bond. That evening I took her to our favorite lookout point, a bluff overlooking the town where the first snow of winter was beginning to dust the landscape. The ring box felt heavy in my pocket. Remember when we first came here? Beatrice asked, her breath visible in the cold air. You were so jumpy, checking for surveillance every 5 minutes. Occupational hazard, I shrugged. Hard to break the habits. You still do it, she observed, but less often. It was true, the hypervigilance had eased, though never completely disappeared. I still maintained escape routes, contingency plans, weapons hidden throughout our home. But I no longer saw threats in every shadow. I've been thinking about what you said, I began. About that lifetime in Egypt where we grew old together. What about it? I want that for us in this lifetime. I turned to face her, taking her gloved hands in mine. No more running, no more past lives where we're torn apart. Her eyes widened as I dropped to one knee, snow crunching beneath me. Beatrice Collins, or Williams, or whatever name you choose next, will you marry me? She laughed through sudden tears. You're seriously proposing in the snow? Your knee must be freezing. Is that a yes? I pressed, smiling up at her. Of course it's a yes, she replied, pulling me up to kiss me. In this life, and all the ones to come. As snowflakes caught in her fiery hair, I slid the ring onto her finger, a simple band with 2 interlocking circles, symbolic of our souls finding each other across time. Later that night, warm in our bed while snow fell outside, Beatrice traced lazy patterns on my bare shoulder. What are you thinking about? She asked. How close we came to repeating the pattern, I admitted. Me the protector, you the healer, torn apart by violence. But we broke it, she reminded me, for the first time in centuries. I pulled her closer, breathing in the scent that had become home to me. Do you ever regret it, getting involved with someone like you? She repeated, propping herself up on one elbow to look at me. You mean someone brave enough to walk away from everything they knew? Someone who chooses love over violence every day? You know what I mean, I insisted. My past is past, she interrupted firmly. Anna, when we met in that record store, something ancient recognized something ancient. Our souls knew each other before our minds did. She was right. From that first moment over Etta James's vinyl, some part of me had recognized her, not just as a beautiful woman, but as something essential that had been missing. Outside, the snow continued falling, covering our small town in a blanket of white. Inside, wrapped in Beatrice's arms, I finally understood what centuries of searching had been for. Not just love, but home. Not just passion, but peace. For the first time in countless lifetimes, we'd chosen each other above all else. And in doing so, we'd finally broken the cycle that had separated us again and again across history. This time, we would grow old together. This time, we would write a different ending. This time, we were home,